sir, we're not yet live po.
We're not yet live. So,
Yeah.
all right. But what about now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure po.
Thank you. All right. So we're going to start with erythrocyte sedimentation rate, and it's one of the probably one of the easiest tests you guys are going to do in your time. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So what is measured by ESR is, of course, a sec. What is measured by ESR? Sorry, somebody texted me. I'll come back to that one. So it's measured. It measures the packing of red cells, okay, in an anticoagulated tube. All right. So it measures the packing of red cells in an anticoagulated tube, and some of the clinical implications or usage of ESR are the following. There's three things that it's useful for. First off, it's an indirect measure of the body's physiological response to a disease. Okay, so indirect. Okay, rising ESR from baseline means a disease is progressing, and a declining ESR from a baseline means that an improvement either due to treatment or the body's natural response after disease resolution is observed. So, gumagaling ang pasyente na yun yung mini-measure niya. Alright? So, those are three things. It's an indirect measure. It rises from the baseline as a disease progresses, and it declines due to improvement, either by treatment or the body's natural response after a disease resolution. Alright? So, factors that affect sedimentation rate. Please don't forget this. This might be asked in your board exam. Okay? Properties of the RBC, properties of plasma, and technical factors. What do you mean by properties of RBCs? So basically, your RBCs are important in determining your RBCs. The structure of RBCs is important in determining the speed at which your cells will pack. Okay, the plasma, whatever is inside your plasma, can also affect what you might be, what your ESR result might result will have, what ESR result you're going to have, and then of course technical factors, temperature, time, and other things that is unrelated to the patient's sample. So anything beyond beyond the things that I mentioned prior to RBC and plasma is going to fall under technical factors. All right. Now, what is the relationship between the following patients' ESR? Weight of RBC and surface area. Okay? So weight is directly proportional to the patient's ESR. Okay? The RBC's weight is important. Okay? Surface area is indirectly proportional to the value of the ESR method. What do I mean by weight and surface area? Weight is how heavy the cells are. But sir, we don't measure the weight of RBCs. How will we know this? Well, if you are familiar with the term or with the RBC index, mean corpuscular volume, you would be able to deduce either the weight of the RBCs or the surface areas of the RBC. So you just rely on your RBC indices. Okay? So weight is directly proportional to the value of the ESR, and surface area is indirectly proportional to the value of the ESR. So I'll give you an analogy here. If you place a rock and a balloon in if you place a balloon side by side near a corner, near a I don't know, near the window, and you allow them to fall, who do you think will fall faster, the balloon or the stone? Sorry, who do you think would fall faster? It's going to be the stone, right? because it's heavier and it's much denser in mass, right? As opposed to the balloon, the only solid portion of it is the outer layer, right? Similar to that, which one would fall faster? A balloon that's larger in size, okay, or a balloon that's smaller in size. So again, the larger the surface area of a particular sample, the more likely it's going to fall faster. The more likely it's going to it's going to decelerate as it falls down. Okay? So it's indirectly proportional. All right? So clear? See, kung sino yung mas mabigat, siya yung mas magpapataas ng result. Kung sino yung mas magaan, tapos mas malaki, mas baliktad ang resulta. Alright? So, tinagalog ko lang. Alright? Now, what would be expected if cells aggregate in the ESR tube? Okay? Well, when the cells aggregate in the ESR tube, the ESR might there would be a high ESR result, a faster ESR result rather. So normally they would sediment, which means that they would sediment faster than normal RBC, RBC sedimentation rates. Okay, so it will be a faster one. What do you mean by aggregation? Aggregation is when cells clump together. That's why even if you're doing ESR analysis, you are supposed to refrain from using coagulated samples or clotted samples, because there's obviously aggregation of RBC. But of course, aggregation and agglutination is different. Aggregation, you can dislodge them. Aggregates can be dislodged, but agglutination needs to be it cannot be separated with just a couple of when you just a couple of flicks of the test tube. You can't do that. Okay, so that's the difference between aggregates and agglutinates. All right, now it's faster sedimentation if it's aggregated. This is known as stacking of coins in a sample. When you look at it in the microscope, this is termed as stacking of coins. Who can pronounce this as well as, sorry, wala pala akong picture sa itsura. Hindi ko makita yung itsura ko sa ano. Who can pronounce this as well as, hang on a sec. Alright, so who can pronounce this as well as say the correct answer? Okay? So who has the capacity? Ayoko na kay Adrian. Lagi lang si Adrian sumasagot. What about Alfonso? Alright, so pronunciation is fine as well. It's actually Rouleau formation. Thank you so much. This is known as RBC stacking or stacking of coins. Alright, so if you see this word Rouleau, okay, it means that basically the cells are just stacking. Alright, so very good, Alfonso. Alright, this is the correct spelling. Of course, it's Rouleau. Some of my students before you guys, your predecessors, would often refer to it as Rolux formation. So, sir, Rolux formation po. Ganun. But it's actually the incorrect way of saying it. Okay, it's not Rolux, it's Rouleau formation. Alright? So, not only am I teaching you hematology related facts, but I'm also teaching you guys pronunciation. O, di ba? Charot. Okay? So, ano ba yung mga pronunciation na mga vocabulary words na tinuro ko sa inyo kanina? Last time, tuwang-tuwa si Adrian. Ano ba yung pinapa-pronounce ko sa iyo last time, Adrian? Yung tuwang-tuwa ka?
Blastomyces dermatitis.
spoken like a true student of mine. It's blastomyces dermatitis. All right, very good. Okay, so this one is Rouleau formation. Can somebody repeat it for me? I love it. Can somebody repeat it? What about Deandra? Can you please read it for me? I just want to hear. How students would read it. Diandra. All right, so hindi Rolux, Diandra. Okay, thank you so much. All right, so hindi Rolux. Please do not be like your forebearers. Okay, they would often pronounce it as Roluk. All right, now moving on, we're going to discuss the high levels of plasma proteins. High levels of these plasma proteins can result to patient can cause the ESR of a patient to increase. So high levels of this plasma proteins. Okay, there's five actually. It's fibrinogen, alpha 2 globulins, beta 2 globulins, gamma globulins, and lipoproteins. So if the patient has gamma globulinemia, we're going to expect what they call this their ESR results to be elevated. All right. Now these proteins have asymmetric structure and then can increase the zeta potential between RBCs and therefore promotes ReLU formation. All right. So what do we mean by zeta potential? So each cell has a specific range between each other. This is what you call a zeta potential. This is RBC1, RBC2. Okay. There is repulsive forces in between each other. All right. There's repulsive forces in between each other. Now, the whole solution is positively charged, and therefore everything stays constantly away from each other. All right. So it's not because it's being repelled like a magnetic repulsion. It's just that they're constantly far away from each other. It's slow. The whole thing is slow. The whole stacking is slower because of this zeta potential in between them. It's like it's because of the zeta potential. Now, when you add these 5 lipoproteins into the mix, especially if there's an increased volume of these proteins, it actually destroys that positive charge. It absorbs the positive charge, similar to what low ionic strength solution will do. Okay, or LISS, or low ionic strength solution, usually adds to increase the rate of zeta potential between two cells. So if it decreases, the ReLU formation goes faster, or the ReLU formation happens faster. Okay, so that's the reason why these 5 proteins can cause RBCs to stack faster. Therefore, and thereby also increasing the ESR count of the patient, or the ESR value of the patient. All right. Now, elevated levels of these proteins in the plasma can cause ESR levels to decrease. Baliktad naman. To decrease this time. Increase dito sa kabila. Okay? Decrease dito sa kabila. Albumin and lecithin. Alright? Albumin and lecithin. Okay? So, albumin and lecithin can decrease the ESR levels. So, instead of getting the true value, patients with hyperalbuminemia will have a decreased level of ESR. So, it could be a falsely decreased ESR value, an unreadable ESR value. It's always at a 0. Okay, it's always stuck at a 0. Usually these are patients with those kinds of results. But clearly the patient is suffering from some sort. If they found this out when a patient is clearly sick, okay? Remember, it's an indirect measurement of a patient's clinical status, right? Or clinical response to a particular disease. Now, patient has hyperglobulinemia or hyperalbuminemia, and realize that the patient's result keeps on going at a 0 or at a 2. Alright. So it has something to do with albumin. Alright? So it decreases the result of the patient's ESR. Now, let's move on to... Sorry. Sorry. Okay. All right. So let's move on to the mechanical and technical factors that can affect a patient's ESR result. Well, there are several. Okay. I mentioned earlier temperature, time, the size of the tube, the tilting or the angular orientation of the tube, and vibration. Okay. I'm going to I want your attention to focus first on vibrations. Okay. When there's vibrations in a particular table where you do your ESR tests, it can actually affect the true value of your results. And they have. I remember one of my professors would say, which of the following can increase the value or can falsely increase the value of a patient's ESR result? A, blah blah. B, blah blah. C, blah blah. And then lastly is putting the ESR or the Westergren rack on top of a refrigerator. Obviously, the correct answer is putting the Westergren rack on top of the refrigerator. Why is it wrong? Because the refrigerator is actively vibrating all the time. The other questions were like this. The other choices were what? That the tube that was used. Okay, could be the size of the tube. Which of the following has an much more of an effect to the ESR? Actually, that was the correct way of asking the question. That was the one way that I think I remember the question was asked. Which of the following has the most effect, can affect the results the most? Which conditions? It talked about temperature at room temp. It talked about the time at an hour, and then vibrations was put in the mix, and the question was directed towards the placement of the Westergren rack on top of the fridge. Right? So obviously, if there's vibration in a specific surface, it's going to result into a falsely increased ESR value. All right. So be mindful of the questions. They might put it in a question. They might put it in a question related to ESR in this format. Okay. Next, how is the ESR result related to the temperature of the sample? Well, basically, temperature is directly proportional to the rate of sedimentation. Okay, it's directly proportional. The standard temperature is usually done at room temperature, obviously. Okay, and what happened? Why is my slideshow not moving? And how much time is required to perform ESR? It's an hour or 60 minutes if you want to be more specific, or the seconds. You just convert it to seconds if you want. If you want to be extra specific. There are if it's manual method, okay. We have what you call the roller TPX here in our machine. It's here in our hematology laboratory in the place where I work in. It's automated, and it measures there's a laser that passes through a specific sample, and it measures the velocity of the RBCs falling down on a specific line of light there. So when the line at the given time. So the whole thing is like an RBC counter, and it just measures how much RBCs are falling, the velocity of the RBCs falling in the solution. So it's one way for the ESR to be performed. Then it can do ESR analysis for a lot of samples in a matter of 30 minutes. Sorry. So it reduces the 60-minute waiting period, and it allows the technologist to do more than one sample at a time. So all you just need to do is mix the sample and then put it on the rack, and then the roller TPN will measure it, and it will aspirate a small amount of sample from that particular card or for that particular tube, and then it will measure the velocity of the cells. All right. So it's a good way for us to do ESR analyses, analysis in plural form at a faster rate because it's 20 minutes instead of 60 minutes. All right. But if you're doing the manual methodologies, it's usually at an hour. Okay. Now, I have a question. True or false? The size of the tube used for ESR analysis can be any elongated tube with 100 ml graduation markings. Okay? So, true or false? The size of the tube used for ESR analysis can be any elongated tube with 100 ml graduation markings. This is very technical. So I want everybody to participate in this one, and I'll give you guys 30 seconds because I need to drink water, of course. I'll give you guys 30 seconds on the clock. Answer. Okay? 30 seconds. True or false? Okay? It could be any elongated tube with a 100 ml graduation marking. So somebody, Cristina Murillo said false. All right. What about the other people? Ay, hindi ko pala na-off yung ano. Wala pa rin nagsasagot. Si Cristina Murillo lang. All right. I'll increase the timer again. I'll repeat the timer again. I need people to participate, and I want you guys. Don't be shy. I'll be selecting which one of you guys will say. So everybody said false. So lahat kayo may entry. Lahat kayo may entry, ha. Sino pa? So 30 seconds pa. I want to see, maybe somebody would say true, and maybe they would contest what you guys already said. And this is not a vote, okay? It's not political. We moved past that type of discussion with medtech laws, and we're now here with actual facts. So hindi na tayo pwedeng mag-decide as a group. So maybe everybody is incorrect, right? So maybe everyone is incorrect. So who wants to explain their answer? Why false? Let's start with the last person who answered, Apple Lagrana. Why did you answer false? Apple? Wala. What about Regine? Regine, why did you answer false? I want to know what's going on in those brain of yours, in the brain that you guys have. I want to know. I want to go inside your brains, and I want to pick your brain on this thing. Okay, the size of the tube used for ESR analysis can be any elongated tube with 100 graduation markings. I want to know. I want to know why. Deandra, why did you answer false? Deandra? Wala talaga sumasagot. My goodness. Grabe kayo guys, ha. Pagod na. Hala. Nagtatampo ata sila kasi na-late ako kanina. Alright. Somebody raised their hand. Alright. Unmute yourself. Alright, Christine. Oh, wait lang. Huwag ka naninigaw. Nabingi ako. Nabingi ako doon. Alright. Okay, Christine. Alright.
Ano po sir, false po yung answer kasi 'di ba yung size po kasi nung tube yung isa sa mga factors na nakaka-affect ng result ng ESR po.
Mm-hmm.
So kaya dapat parang standard size lang po yung kailangan gamitin.
Very good. That was the answer that I was looking for. Thank you, Christine. That is the correct according to if I'm going to imitate what Chris Aquino would say. Correct. Game ka na ba? Charot, ganon. All right. So true. She's correct. It's false because it is standardized. Okay? Even the bore of the the diameter of the tube is measured at a standard size. So you cannot use any other tube that is 100 that's 100 that's just graduated 100 meters. It has to also have the dimensions within the bore. All right? So all ESR methodologies require a standardized tube for analysis. You can't just use okay. So for example, Sir Marco said, okay, ito na. You can do it you can do ESR perform ESR analysis. Nagbigay lang si Sir Marco ng mga tube na mahahaba. Tapos may 100. Tapos, ito naman si Adrian, alright! Same accent. Well, alright! I'm going to do it! Ganon. Same accent. Sinulatan niya ng graduation na 100. Tama ba yon? Of course not. Alright? So, you gotta ask, sir, we need a standardized Westergren tube or a Westergren tube or another ESR methodology tube for this one. You can't just use this one. So, dun pa lang, Sir Marco might be testing your knowledge on ESR. So, mali yung ginawa ni yung fictional view ko na sasabihin ni Adrian na, well, all right, sir, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to put 100 ml graduation on the tube because obviously that's what Sir Manuel said. So, ganon. Ginagaya-gaya niya ako with the same accent, of course. Alright? Ganon. Alright, now, how will tilting affect the ESR result? I know, this looks like it's common sense questions, but some of the students, they would still answer wrong. You can see, but from my line of questioning, it sort of falls under the lines of common sense and basic physics, so to speak. So tilting the ESR tube can actually affect it falsely also, because an angular tilt can greatly increase the ESR result of a patient falsely. Just a slight angular tilt. Okay? Now, let's talk about vibrations. The vibrations can actually falsely increase ESR values as well. So, if you put it on top of a fridge that is actively vibrating, or I don't know, worst case scenario, so when a cleaner is cleaning the workbench, they would put the ESR endorsement kasi night shift, kakarating lang ni cleaning person. All right, lakad-lakad si keme-keme si Kuya Bell's janitor, ganyan. All right? So sabi niya, okay, lipat ko lang to. Alam ko naman siguro yung inaantay lang nila yung pagbaba ng cell. So Kuya Bell's janitor, hindi naman alam na merong effect yung vibration. So nilagay niya dun sa taas ng refrigerator. All right? So according sa endorsement, you came in at 7 o'clock and in the endorsement, it's supposed to be read at 7:05. Nabigla si patient kasi he's not feeling anything differently. It was just part of his checkup. And then nagulat siya na 90 plus ang ESR niya. Simply because somebody put the ESR or the Westergren rack with the tube on top of the refrigerator. So please guys, please do not put it on any vibrating surfaces. Actually, I always try to put it away from the workbench. I have a small table there away from everything that I'm doing for ESR results whenever I work in the laboratory, because sometimes these results will falsely increase the results of a patient. And then sometimes my colleagues would ask me, Manuel, look at the result. It's 100. All right, I'll just repeat it. And then when I repeat it on a special place where I leave the ESR tubes, it's somewhere around 70 or 80. Okay? Somewhere around 70 or 50. So overall, lesson here is, one of the lessons here is avoid putting it on top of any vibrating surface. Even beside the centrifuges or the rollers, we have I don't know if you guys have it there in the full in your school when you're doing experiments. Avoid putting it beside those rollers because those slight nuances in vibrations can actually result to false results, falsely elevated results. Okay? Nag-unmute si Sir Marco.
Sir, may dagdag pala ako.
Uh-huh.
Sir, I think this was a board exam question.
Yes, it was a board exam question. It was.
How would ESR be affected kapag nilagay mo siya sa taas ng refrigerator?
Yeah, yon. That one I never knew the answer because I was absent on the next. How would you answer that one? I never really understood the concept of that one if it's on top. So, can you please help us out here?
I think yun nga. So, falsely decreased siya.
Mhm.
Falsely increased
Mhm.
because nagva-vibrate, may slight vibration yung refrigerator.
Mm-mm. Yeah, so it was a
So,
bit yun yung question nga.
yung
Parang may values kasi na binigay sa akin yung professor ko. Naalala ko yon na okay, normal value nakalagay, alright. Tapos binigay sa question is 0 millimeters per hour, 5 millimeters per hour, 20 millimeters per hour, and then 35 millimeters per hour. So I think I remember the correct answer was 35 millimeters per hour because the normal value for that particular patient was around 0 to 20. So that's one of the cases. So it's a case study. It's in the form of a case study in the Philippine board exam. I'm not sure about the exact details because I was absent on how they were answering it before the next day. So that's why I wanted to ask you guys. But I researched it for you guys. So obviously it's going to falsely increase the ASR result. And somebody raised their hand. Who raised their hand? I think it was Adrian. Why did you raise your hand?
Napindot ko, sorry.
Hay nako talaga to si Adrian, no? Sir Marco. Okay? So, yeah, what the answer would be a falsely increased result. So, obviously, they're going to provide you with normal values, especially in the Philippine board exams. So, don't worry about that one. What you need to know is the idea of what would happen if they put the tube on top of the fridge. And again, as Sir Marco said, it was a question in the board exam. It's been appearing several times, I suppose, all throughout the years since I was practicing way back in 2012. I know I am such an old person. I've been practicing for almost a decade now. Shut up. All right? Okay. I know I sound old, pero okay pa rin naman, 'di ba? Charot. Talagang gumanyan eh, no? Okay. All right. I still look young pa naman. 'Di ba, Adrian? Ay, di sumagot si Adrian. Ang bagal, may hesitation. May hesitation ang sagot ni Adrian. Parang ayoko nang bigyan ng pasalubong si Adrian. Alright. Okay. Okay pa ba, Mayra? I still look young pa ba? Alright, so that's one of the questions that they asked. Mayra, hindi talaga supportive ang mga students
Yes,
sa
sir.
akin. Looking young pa rin.
Sureness.
Parang, my God, parang hindi genuine ang sound.
Sureness, sir.
Ayan, wala kasing energy. Wala, my goodness, medyo napapahiya ako sa inyo guys. Kayo talaga ha, nakakalurky kayong lahat. Alright, let's move on na. How much time do we still have? 15 minutes. Alright, what are the stages of erythrocyte sedimentation? Do we need to know this? Yes. What do you mean, sir? What are the stages? Well, there's 3 stages. The first is the first 10 minutes. That's when the Rolu formation is slow. All right, and then it accelerates after the first 10 minutes. It accelerates to 40%, 40 minutes. And afterwards, up to the 40-minute mark, the cells agglutinate at an accelerated rate. Okay, and then within the last 10 minutes, it slows down again as the cells pack together, and that's the time. And at the end of that last 10-minute mark, that's the time that you're going to read it. Do I need to read it? Do I need to read it exactly at the 10-minute mark? Of course, you need to. Of course, you need it. You need to read it. But I suppose if you're doing the manual methodology, you can maybe read it 10 minutes or 4 minutes. 10 or 4 minutes. Not 4 minutes beyond the last 10-minute mark. Okay. All right, so so that you guys can still have time, because I know in the hospital you have a ton of patients, and most of the time people would forget about their ESR tubes. And I've seen a lot of my interns when I was working in there in the Philippines who oftentimes forget it, and it's a little bit wasteful. So guys, remember, we're trying to be environmentally friendly here, and these things are made of plastic, and if you guys waste it, the way to repeat, if you repeat it, or you have to put it up and then add another one, remove it and then add another one. So we don't want to keep on using those plastic tubes. Okay, so save time for your patient, for your save time and money. That's the only message here that I'm trying to get across. All right, so yeah, first 10 minutes, Relu formation, slow sedimentation. 40-minute mark starts at the cell starts to accelerate in sedimentation. In the last 10 minutes, the sedimentation slows down as the cells complete packing at the bottom of the tube. All right, easy peasy. Now, examples of the most commonly used ESR methodologies. We have Westergren, the modified Westergren, and the Winthrop method. All right, the most simplest and most widely used, and the one that I've been using when I was there in the Philippines, I've been using now, and I think for almost a decade, a decade now, is Westergren method. But ever since I came here to this, my current base of employment, we've been using the automated ESR analyzer. All right. So this one is the Westergren method. It's the simplest and it's the most popular method. All you need to do is collect blood sample from a citrated tube. Usually it's the black tap there in the Philippines. All right, and then just punch the tube there. Usually it will produce a vacuum seal, and then it will allow the blood to move up the tube, or the Westergren tube. Modified Westergren and Winthrop tube, we're going to discuss this further. Now, according to the international clinical standards of healthcare facilities, the ESR is considered as the which ESR methodology is considered as the reference method for undiluted whole blood sample. I said undiluted. All right. So according to international standards, according to international clinical standards of healthcare facilities, it's the Westergren method. All right, for undiluted whole blood. Now, what are the reagents that we used for whole blood for Westergren method? You need several reagents. You need sodium citrate with a molarity of 0.105 molarity. And the preparation is 0.5 ml of that sodium citrate, okay, and 2 ml of whole blood, okay. So this is the reference method. Sir, what do you mean? Do I need to use the tube? According to the reference method, you collect the blood and then you transfer 2 ml of that whole blood to a tube with 0.5 ml of sodium citrate with 0.105 molar. 0.105 molar. Okay? Molarity of sodium citrate. Alright, 0.5. So obviously the total volume of your sample would be 2.5 ml based on the methodologies. Now, how much do we need to dilute it? Dilutions required. So, sorry. How is it computed? Dilutions are required for several cases. When there is a greater than 35% hematocrit, okay, and the correction is, there is a correction computation for that one. So this might be asked in your exams. All right, so if it's greater than 35% hematocrit, it's going to be corrected by using ESR, corrected ESR formula. ESR result of the patient times 0.086 minus 12. So that's the correction. All right, ESR of the ESR result if you're doing dilutions for patients with greater than 35% hematocrit using the Westergren method. All right. Now, what is the major difference between modified Westergren and its unmodified counterpart? Well, here you can use EDTA samples. Okay, modified Westergren. And the major advantage of this is that since most hematology tests utilizes EDTA, there's no need to collect another sample. Okay, you can use it. You can use the same sample for CBC because usually automated analyzers would just require maybe zero 0.1 ml of the sample of the EDTA collected blood sample, and you can use that for, and you can use the rest for um, for ESR, right? Okay, so EDTA samples can be used on this one. Now, what reagents can be used in the modified Westergren? Again, you need several solutions. It's indicate some of the tubes that I when I use the modified Westergren method, I actually don't support the usage of Westergren method because it requires reagents, percent solutions actually. You need sodium chloride and sodium citrate, and these are the percentages: 0.5% of sodium chloride and 3.8%. Please add percent on sodium citrate. Okay? So that's the difference between modified Westergren and Westergren method. You can use EDTA samples, but you need to have these reagents. All right? Why though? There's prepared if you come across some manufacturers, they prepare ESR tubes there. All you need to do is just transfer EDTA samples to those tubes and you can do it directly there. But you gotta follow the instructions, of course. All right, there's a certain amount of sample that you can just put on the tube. So if you're out of so if you run out of sample, you can fill it up to the line. That means that you might that means you might get a false result. All right, false ESR result. Will it be elevated? Yes. No, it will be a decreased result because there's certain dilutional errors in there. All right. Now, major disadvantage of Westergren method is of course precision. Okay, precision-based errors. Why? You need to transfer and pipette the reagents or the samples rather. You need to pipette the reagents or the samples in a specific tube, and that can result. And of course, the if pipetting is associated with, if manual pipetting is associated with the methodology, there is going to be a problem in terms of precision. What do you mean by precision, by the way, my lovely students? What do I mean by precision? Anybody? You can just say it vaguely, in general. Let's try asking questions from people in the chat randomly. Let's ask Alexis Enrile. He's the first person there in the group. Alexis Enrile, are you here? Ay, hala. Wala talaga. I'm being ignored talaga, Sir Marco. I feel so sad. Charot. All right. So, let's find another person. What about Alfonso? Alfonso Benedric Mendoza. Alfonso. All right. So, okay, so you just said the word precise. You just repeated what I said. Precision is getting the exact amount. All right. Okay. Let's try again. Thank you, Alfonso, for sharing your thoughts. All right, I appreciate it. All right. What about another person who starts with letter A? What about Ana Jamema Athing? Athing or Athing? Anna. What do I mean by precision?
Yung ano po sir, precision is yung nearest po sa parang value.
No, you're talking about accuracy. Right? You're talking about accuracy, the nearness of the nearness of your value to a specific target value. That's accuracy. All right? Another person. Ooh, I think this one is an amazing question. What about Cesar Makatulad? Cesar, are you still there? Are you here with us? Cesar. Precision. What about Christine? Christine Murillo. Try your best to answer what's precision based. What is precision? What is precision, guys? Christine Murillo. Alright, Charis. Nauna si Charis, Joanna, sorry. Tingnan muna natin.
Sir, precision means po, it gives the same repeated results po.
Very good. The reproducibility of the results. So, magkakaroon ba tayo ng problema kapag pipetting manually? Yes. If, for example, Adrian, Sir Marco, and I did the tests. So, the three of us did the test. Sir Marco's result is 35 millimeters per hour. Mine is 35.5 millimeters per hour. And then Adrian's result is at around, at 27. Which one is the imprecise result? Do you think? Talagang magkakampi kami ni Sir Marco, no? Talagang lagi naming nililibak yung pagkatao ni Adrian. Alright, so who do you think has the most, Of course, Adrian, because he didn't get close to the values that both Sir Marco and I did. So, there's only a 0.5 difference between us. And then, dumagdag pa si Mayra Gagaso na 34.9 ang result. Dumagdag pa si Charis na 34.8. Sumunod pa si Ana na 35.1. Diba? So, ganon. So, imprecision basically means that some of the people in the laboratory are not doing the same procedures or have mistakenly performed the procedure. Because again, manual methodologies are more likely to produce precision-based errors. Okay? So thank you so much, Charis, for helping us out in terms of precision, of what we mean by precision. All right? So I think I only have 3 minutes, so we'll just wrap it up closely. We'll just wrap it up to where we can finish. All right? So the main difference between the Winthrop tube and other methodologies is that I've already said that already. NaCl. EDTA samples may be used without the need of NaCl and sodium citrate dilution. All right? So that's the main difference of Winthrop method. We have Westergren, modified Westergren, and Winthrop method. Okay? Then we have Winthrop method. You can use EDTA samples without the need for dilution. Okay? Now, some of the cases where ESR is commonly monitored. Patients who have sickle cell anemia, patients with osteomyelitis, patients who have suffered strokes, patients who have prostate cancer, and patients who have coronary heart disease. All right? So these are the common monitoring, the tests, the disease states or conditions that might prompt a physician to request ESR monitoring. All right? Why is it important to do ESR analysis on patients with sickle cell anemia? Because SCD patients or sickle cell disease patients will have a normal to low result when in the absence of sickling crisis. Moderate to high values are expected in patients 1 week into sickling, 1 week who are 1 week into a sickling crisis. Remember what I told you guys earlier, the story of my friend who has a child that has sickle cell disease and thalassemia trait. Okay, so moderate to high value. We usually because we're doing the automated methodologies, we would just collect a blood sample from baby and not baby. She's already a toddler. We would just collect a small amount of blood from the kid, and then we would run it, and then okay, so we don't need to do anything else if it's somewhere within the normal or lower range. But one time, especially yesterday, the kid was sent to the emergency room, and one of the tests that the doctors requested was ESR, and we believe that she's been having sickling crisis. She's been into the sickling crisis for almost a week. Why? Because her ESR value is number that her recent ESR value from yesterday's result was actually 97, right? From a low value of 15, she immediately shifted to 90 plus. All right, so that's the reason why it's important. It's still important. Now, you guys might contest me on this. Why people still indirect? You can use CRP, right? Based on what we mentioned earlier, it's an indirect measurement of a certain disease state. But there are some conditions wherein ESR is still useful, especially one here that I mentioned, SCD patients or sickle cell disease. Now, the purpose for patients with osteomyelitis is that it monitors the treatment effectivity. Okay? So, for patients with osteomyelitis, the ESR result of patients would decrease gradually. Okay? So, they are often monitored with ESR, with serial ESR measurements. So, for every week, a patient with osteomyelitis would need blood. We need to take blood from these patients every week, once a week, just to see the effectivity of the treatment that these patients are undergoing. Okay? Next, importance of ESR measurements for patients with stroke. Patients with stroke usually have with a value of 28 millimeters per hour have a poor prognosis. It has been reported, and my main source here is Daisy's book. Okay, I think you can also see it in Rodak if they have not. The last time I've seen the book was way back in 2013, and that was me when I was taking the exam for ASCP. But according to Daisy's book, which I recently read yesterday, it's still there. It was edited. It was the last edition was the latest edition was the 2020 edition, year 2020 edition, and it's still there. Greater than 28 millimeters per hour will have poor prognosis. Okay, stroke patients. What do I mean by poor prognosis? You will keep on hearing the word prognosis several times. So when we say something like a prognosis, a diagnosis is basically identifying the disease. A prognosis is understanding the outcome of the disease, whether a patient will survive. All right, you would often hear it when people are talking about cancer prognosis. What's the prognosis for this patient? All right, what's the prognosis for a patient who got hit by a train? All right, so poor prognosis means that there is minimal chance for survival. That's basically, or minimal chance for improvement, even with treatment. All right, or prompt intervention. Yun yung magandang terminology. Now, let's talk about ESR measurements in the view of prostate cancer patients. Patients with greater than 37 millimeters per hour, according again to the books. Okay? Bakit ko nilagay ito? Tinatanong siya, usually. It's usually a question that's appearing time and time again in question banks for either the ASCP or the board exams. Why is it important to measure ESR for prostate cancer cases? Because patients with greater than 37 millimeters per hour has a higher incidence of disease development and even death. Again, prognosis. It is a prognostic tool. All right? So it's a prognostic tool, not just a general identifier, but it's also a prognostic tool. All right? How many minutes do I? I'm almost up. Don't worry, I'm almost finished. What is the relationship of coronary heart disease with ESR? Again, we're going to give you an exact value. Males with greater than 20 millimeters per hour have a higher risk of getting CAD. Usually, the normal value for males is at around 0 to 12. In some institutions here in our hospital, it's at around 0 to 15. If you're a person if you're a person with family history of coronary artery disease or coronary heart disease, you always get the results of greater than 22 millimeters per hour. You're probably at risk. Okay? Now, hemoglobin analysis is something that we're going to talk about tomorrow during our continuation. All right? And I'll be giving case analysis questions for you guys to practice on tomorrow. So hopefully you have retained some knowledge from our discussions earlier, and even in this particular exam, even in this particular lecture. All right. So that is it for me for today. Same time tomorrow, I suppose. Terribly sorry for being late earlier, 30 minutes late. So binawi ko naman siya. 5 minutes, right? Overall, you guys have been very active today, and I love the same. I would like you guys to have the same energy as you did earlier. Mas maganda yung kahit mali, we're not judging here. We're trying to correct it because before you come into your exams, right? Do you have anything to say, Sir Marco?
I'm judging.
He's judging, yeah. Secretly.
Ginajudge ko sila.
Oo.
Sa maling sagot.
Kasi naman, 'di ba? Pinapagalit. Especially kapag mga question is simple, medyo nadidisappoint sa inyo yan si Sir Marco. 'Di ba?
Yung mga
medyo.
yung granulocytic monocytic na cerebrospinal fluid.
Oo, yun talaga yung we're not going to name names, but itatago na lang natin siya sa pangalang pangalang Francis Alipio, no? Congressman Francis Alipio. It's very disappointing. Ayan yung sa Game of Thrones, shame. Ganon. Alright? So, guys, thank you so much, and I would love to see you guys again tomorrow, alright? Thank you so much for listening and answering the questions. Alright?
Thank you.
Bye, guys!
Thank you, Sir Manuel.
Manual, ang arte talaga. Alright, so bye, guys!